Hey! What are you kids still doing at this late hour of the night? Juana asked her children who sat comfortably at the couch. She crossed her arms and waited for an answer. Don't you know it's already late? Taiwo turned to her mother with a pleading look. Mum, please. We're just trying to finish this movie. It's so interesting, she said, her hands clasped together as though she were begging. Kehinde quickly chimed in, his excitement evident. It's true, Mum. We've already gotten to the most interesting part of the movie. We really want to know what happens next. Juana's stern expression softened, but before she could say anything, Frank, her husband, appeared in the doorway. Let them be, honey, he said with a small smile. Tomorrow is Saturday. They can stay late. The twins let out a chorus of cheers, jumping slightly in their seats. Thank you, Dad. You're the best. We love you, they said together, their voices full of joy. Juana shook her head and sighed. You too. Your father is spoiling you. But her tone had lost its edge, and a small smile tugged at her lips. Come on, babe, Frank said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Let's go to bed and leave them to enjoy their movie. He gently pulled her toward their room. As their parents disappeared down the hallway, Kehinde and Taiwo turned back to the television, their attention once again captured by the glowing screen. The American movie had reached an erotic scene where the actress undressed herself and slowly climbed on top of a young guy who laid naked on the bed. Their lips were locked together as they touched each other's weaker parts, and the rest was history. Taiwo stole a glance at her brother. His eyes were fixed on the action showing on the TV screen with an unshaken focus. She leaned a little closer and tilted her head. Hey, Kehinde, she said softly with a teasing voice. You're so focused on what's happening on the TV. But Kehinde didn't reply, he was so focused on the screen. She smiled and spoke again in a romantic tone. I can tell from your eyes that you're really enjoying it. This time, Kehinde smiled faintly but still said nothing. Are you enjoying it? She asked, leaning closer now. And if I said yes, what would you do? Kehinde finally responded, still so focused on the TV screen. Taiwo adjusted closer to her brother, a sly grin forming on her lips. Then we'll figure something out, she replied quickly. Kehinde glanced at her briefly, then back at the screen. He could sense something in her tone, something mischievous. Her gaze lingered on him, and her expression told him everything. It's obvious from your eyes that you want it so bad tonight, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. And it's just as obvious that you do too, because your D is already set to strike. Taiwo replied with a smile, her voice dropping even lower. Kehinde froze for a moment, but immediately covered his pants with his hands. You don't have to cover it. I've been seeing it always, Taiwo said with a softer voice. The tension in the room was thick, and the television continued to play, but neither of them was paying attention anymore. She climbed on top of his twin brother and gave him a deep kiss. She pulled off her nightwear and slowly took off Kehinde's trousers while rubbing his engine. Ah, you have it huge, Kehinde, she said in a whisper tone. Kehinde was already so lost in ecstasy that he couldn't say a word but enjoyed his sister's touch. Taiwo, are we doing the right thing? Kehinde queried in a fearful tone. What do you mean by the right thing? Aren't you enjoying my touch? She responded. That's not what I meant, sis. I'm just scared that we might not be doing the right thing. Shoo. Just lie on the couch, let me get this thought out of your head, Taiwo said. Before he could respond, she pushed him gently onto the couch. She was trying to unzip his trouser when Kehinde stopped her. I don't think we're doing the right thing, he said, his voice trembling. Please, get off me. He pushed her aside, stood up abruptly, and walked into their room. Taiwo was left alone in the parlor, biting and licking her tongue. Morning arrived too quickly for Taiwo. She hadn't slept a wink, her mind was racing as she waited for the new day to begin. It was Saturday, a day without school, and their parents had already left early in the morning, leaving the 16-year-old twins home alone. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Taiwo found her brother in the kitchen, making toast. She leaned against the doorframe, watching him for a moment before speaking. You just walked out on me last night, she said, her voice cutting through the stillness. Kehinde paused, his hands resting on the counter. He didn't turn to face her as he replied, "Yeah, I had to because my body was shaking, like I had a fever when you climb on top of me." "You have to feel that way because it was your first time," she said sharply, stepping closer to where he stands. "You need to stop acting like a baby, Kehinde. Be a man. Take a bold step for once." He turned to face her, his expression conflicted. "It's not about being bold, Taiwo. It just didn't feel right. I couldn't." She interrupted him, her eyes narrowing. "If you can't do it, then maybe I should start calling you a girl. I won't see you as a man anymore," she added. At noon, Taiwo walked out of the bathroom to their room and saw Kehinde wearing only a towel tied round his waist. He pulled off the towel while applying some cream on his body. A hand circled around his chest from behind. "What the fuck is wrong with you, Taiwo? How can you walk into our room when I'm dressing up? Why can't you give me some space?" Kehinde said with an angry voice. "No, Kehinde. You are my twin brother, your body is mine and mine is yours," she said in a romantic voice while rubbing her hand on his chest. Kehinde can't control himself again, he was already feeling her touch. "Look brother, your D is already hard. Let's do this please, stop proving stubborn," she added. Kehinde let loose of himself while nodding his head like a lizard. Taiwo whispered to his ear that he should allow them do it like the men they watched on the TV yesterday's night. She gently undressed herself and both of them fell on the bed, naked. While they were arguing, a neighbor was eavesdropping on them from the window and decided to go and knock on their door. "Blood of Jesus! What are you twins doing?" The neighbor screamed after seeing Kehinde and Taiwo's naked body touching each other on the bed. "Your parents must hear this." The twins froze, their faces were pale with shock. They went on their knees, pleading with her with their trembling voices. They begged not to report the incident to their parents. But the neighbor's face remained stern. "No, I can't let this slide. This is a deadly act, and your parents need to hear and stop it before it's too late." She then turned to Kehinde. "Why are you having an affair with your twin sister?" Kehinde's hands trembled, his eyes glistening with tears. "It wasn't my fault," he stammered. "She forced herself on me." "What?" "She forced herself on you," she repeated, her voice rising with disbelief. Taiwo stood silent, her head bowed, saying nothing in her defense. "I can't let this go, you need to be punished dearly for this," the neighbor declared. Without another word, she left the house. The moment the door slammed shut, Kehinde turned to his sister, his face a mixture of fear and frustration. "Do you see what you've caused? I told you this won't bring any positive result. Why do you always let little things bother you? See how you're shivering in fear." Taiwo replied with a calm voice. "She's just a nosy neighbor. What makes you think Mum and Dad will believe her if we tell them she's lying against us?" Kehinde shook his head. "You have to stop shivering. Let's plan on what to tell Mum and Dad if our neighbor Dare tells them about this," Taiwo added. By noon, their mother, Wana, returned from work earlier than usual, planning to cook for Sunday. Taiwo joined her in the kitchen, washing vegetables, while Kehinde tried to keep the mood light as he throws some topics at her as they discuss. Their hearts sank when the neighbor arrived. She stepped into the kitchen with an unfriendly expression on her face. "Good afternoon, Wana," she greeted. Wana paused before responding. "Good afternoon. How can I help you?" The neighbor wasted no time. "I don't need anything from you. I'm just here to report something important about your kids." "A report about my kids? What is it about?" "Can you believe that I caught them almost having sex earlier today?" the neighbor stated firmly. Wana froze, she gently stood up from the small kitchen chair she was sitting on. "I don't think I heard you correctly," she said softly. The neighbor repeated herself. Wana stared at her for a long moment before glancing at her children. "Mummy, she's lying," Taiwo quickly interjected. "We were just playing in the room. She knocked on the door and insisted we were having an affair, but it's not true." The neighbor's face darkened. "What? Taiwo, so you can lie this boldly?" "Auntie, I'm not lying," Taiwo insisted. "Kehinde, am I lying?" Kihindi nodded slowly, his heart pounding. The neighbor turned back to Wana, her voice rising with frustration. These kids are lying, Wana. I'm telling you to discipline them properly. You're spoiling them with all this leniency. Before the neighbor could finish her sentence,